Brian, Iowa asks, how many subwoofers can you plug into one sub pre-out before the signal gets too weak? Do they make a device that turns one sub pre-out to multiple sub pre-outs? Brian, that is a fantastic question. So before we dive into answering your question, if you're watching this video and you're wanting to connect multiple subwoofers, on the back of your AVR, maybe you only have one sub out, or maybe you have two sub outs, and you want to add more subwoofers than your AVR or your processor has outputs for, I've got an incredible video that's really easy to understand that walks you through all the different ways that you can connect multiple subwoofers. So I'm not going to address that in this video, but I do want to mention that. I'll leave a link to it up in the card above as well as in the description below, and I'll even link to it at the end of this video. So if you want to watch this one all the way through and then watch that video, I think it'll walk you through step by step on how to do that. But Brian, to answer your question, I'm assuming, let's say you've got two sub pre-outs on the back of your AVR or your processor, and let's just assume that those are RCA. Probably the best way for me to split that, if you're only going to connect four subwoofers, I wouldn't even worry about getting a splitter, or I wouldn't worry about getting any kind of distribution for RCA pre-outs. You're going to be absolutely 100% no problem splitting that signal. So you're taking one RCA, using a Y adapter, splitting that signal, and then going to two subwoofers. And then if you had a second sub out, taking another Y adapter, splitting that, and going to your other two subwoofers. So you've got four subwoofers that are connected to one AVR, no problem. More than likely, every AVR and every processor is going to be a little bit different as far as how many kind of splitters you could connect to one sub pre-out. So let's just keep it simple. Let's say you have one sub pre-out on your AVR, and let's say you're wanting to connect four subwoofers. So technically, as I mentioned in the other video, there's a lot of different ways you can do that without just having to split that single signal 4 times. But if you want to do that, more than likely you're going to be fine. It's if you try to split it like 6 times or 8 times, I think that signal is definitely going to degrade. So here's one way that you can do that. The only RCA kind of sub out splitter that I'm aware of that works really fantastic. I mean, it's a game changer for me, and it does way more than just split the signal, and that is a MiniDSP 2x4 HD. They do make a non-HD version, but I always recommend getting the HD because it provides more resolution, and it also gives you more time delay. And so when you get into dialing in your subs, if you need more than I think 7 milliseconds of delay, then the non-HD version is not going to work for you because it only goes up to, I believe, 7 milliseconds. And so I always recommend the 2x4 HD. Prime example, in my setup, I'm using one of my RCA outputs coming out of my Marantz AV7706, going into the first input of the 2x4 HD from MiniDSP. And then on the back side of that, there's 4 subwoofer outputs. So I could effectively connect 4 subwoofers to this one device using one RCA. So let's just say if you had 2 RCA outputs on the back of your receiver, you could buy 2 of those 2x4 HDs. You could use one sub out to go into one 2x4 HD. That would effectively power 4 subwoofers. And then you could take the second subwoofer output, go into the second 2x4 HD and power 4 more. So if you need more than 4 subwoofers, you've got a pretty complex setup. Most people I know don't do that. But again, there's so many other ways that you could connect. You know, if you had 10 subwoofers or 12 subwoofers, you can daisy chain those, you know, from subwoofer to subwoofer. So there's a lot of other ways to do it. But to answer your specific question, you know, is there a device that allows you to take one subwoofer input and split that signal? Absolutely. And to me, by far, the best one on the market right now is that 2x4 HD. It's phenomenal. It allows you to use REW and take some measurements of your room, and then you can take that information and kind of put it into that software, and then it's going to EQ your system. You can time align, you can add a house curve. There's so much you can do. It's a time-consuming process, and there's a learning curve, but there's some great resources out there. My friend Brad from Home Theater Gamer has, I think, a 4-part series, very simple to understand. I'll link to his channel down below in that series. That'll help you out. But it'll walk you step by step on how to hook up the 2x4 HD, how to calibrate that, and so forth. But if you're only going to hook up a couple of subwoofers, don't worry about it. Just get a splitter, a Y adapter. So you're going to have a male on one end, 2 females on the other end, and connect 2 subwoofers. Piece of cake. If you have 2 sub outputs, do that twice. No big deal. One on one sub out, one on the other sub out. You're going to be totally fine. I always recommend, if you are connecting more than 2 subwoofers or more, I always recommend using a MiniDSP. You really need to be able to dial in and have those work together versus, you know, those subwoofer frequencies hitting each other and kind of canceling each other out and causing some other issues. So that would be my recommendation. I've actually got a video on the 2x4 HD. So if you found this video helpful, here are 2 additional videos that you can check out. One on how to connect multiple subwoofers and the other on the MiniDSP 2x4 HD. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed this type of format. If you got questions, leave them down in the comments below. And as always, you guys be blessed, and we will catch you in the next video.